Thank you all very much, and please give a very warm welcome to Edi Rama. I wanted to begin with the beginning, Edi, and actually ask you about your very beginnings.
Thank you for having me here.
Could you tell us a little bit about this entry into politics and how that happened?
It came because during the change of the regime, everything started in the Academy of Arts. And so it took 1 year from 89 to 90. And during that year in the Academy of Arts, things moved and created an environment from which then everything blew. And the day of blowing was the 10th anniversary of the death of John Lennon, which was a reason to have the first party, music party, in a public space where people could share forbidden music together. And afterwards, I continued to live between art and politics, not as a politician, but as a citizen that was interested to say. So somehow I became a professional troublemaker. And at that moment, 98, I was given the Minister of Culture job without never thinking of becoming minister. And Ministry of Culture was the first public state building I entered as minister. I never entered before in any state building.
You became mayor of Tirana, and that led to an extraordinary project where you decided to basically bring hope to the city through colors. Can you tell us a little bit about this idea?
When I became mayor, it was kind of, city with no public space. Everything was occupied. People from within the buildings trying to get more space. So balconies were transformed in additional space of the kitchen. First floors, windows were broken to become doors, and the bedroom became flower shop. People at the time, we lived in a very, let's say, tight spaces. And instead of building social housing, the regime built 600,000 bunkers to protect Albania from the hypothetical attack of the American imperialists. So imagine what would have been if they would have built apartments instead of bunkers. So this was the situation, and I became mayor in that situation. And nobody cared anymore about the outside. Nobody cared anymore how the building would look, what to do with the budget that was nothing point something. I started by painting the buildings. So it came like out of necessity. Many times this has been wrongly, I think, described as aesthetic operation. It was political operation with colors. There was a noisy minority against it. And I said, maybe I have to just stop and made a survey, which remains my preferred survey in 20 years of politics. Do you like what's happening in your city with the colors? And do you want it to stop or continue? Do you like it? Was 67% yes. Do you want it to continue? Was 85%. So half of them that didn't like it, didn't want it to stop. So this was like,
Given the theme of this year's Convoco, we are right already in the middle of the theme, but it would be great to hear a little bit more about this intention and how it evolved over time.
About Europe, you mean?
Yeah.
For us, in the region, Europe is first and foremost what was meant to be a project of peace and of cooperation for the good of the young generations. So we can't give up on that. Although Europe is not going well, to say the least, we still want it. And it's not that we want to join Europe and add more headaches to the big guys there who are apparently fed up with some countries that are the newcomers and so on and so further. But it's because we want to build a European country and a European region with institutions and with rule of law and functioning democracies. And there is only one way to do it. It's Europe.
EU values, there are Albanian values. We discussed earlier over lunch how that negotiation happened. So it would be interesting to hear about that and just also what is your personal vision for Europe?
Let me say one thing. Albania was the only country in Europe that had more Jews after the war than before the war. It's the only country in Europe where no Jew was released to the Nazis. And where the Nazis lost it was that Muslim families adopted Jews. And the Albanian Catholic cardinal made a lot of fake baptized procedures to give Jews Catholic identity. And when the Nazis convoked the four religious leaders, they were the only, let's say, authority in the country after the occupation, and they said, we want to sign an agreement with you. You have to agree that the gold that was transferred to Rome should be taken by us, by the Nazis, and you have to agree that the list of Jews should be given. They signed the gold, not the Jews. Take the gold, forget about the Jews. So, is it a value? I think it's a big value, and I think, the fact that in our little poor country, opening the doors and sheltering people is not something you would put in question, but you just do. I think it's a European value, no? What's the point of keeping this space within and without, and leaving this space like a zone where people are still very much believing in the idea of being part of this big family, but, if this idea will fade, what is the difference between a young Muslim in our region and a young Muslim in, let's say, Iraq? The difference is that our young Muslim has Europe, has the dream, has the perspective, has a way of living and of contributing to the world that is, paved by values and by tradition. The young Muslim in Iraq, where is the perspective? So it's very important to understand that, yes, we are Europeans, but being part of the Union for us is not a matter of adding to the mess. It's simply a matter of belonging once and forever to a space of values and people that is the best in the world.
Now, two last questions. We've all seen images over the last couple of weeks in relation to the June 30 election, images which are quite disruptive of what we think of the new Albania. Could you tell us a little bit about that?
Yes, maybe I can. No, I don't know. I'm biased because I'm one side. There is another side that if you had invited them here, you would have heard a completely different story. But it's the beauty at the end of living in freedom and democracy, because you have totally different stories sometimes. We have a very tough political life, in terms of very tough. I strongly believe that the quality of democracy, the quality of living together does not depend on how much you agree, but in which way you disagree. We can't even agree about the time. So we need to grow up. Democracy is not an easy exercise, and growing up and maturing is part of this painful period of transition. And Europe is very important, and European integration is unique because of this. It gives you the tools to modernize. It gives you the way and the know-how to build institutions, to build a credible justice system. And combining the know-how of Europe with the very attractive power Europe has on the Albanians, you can make reforms that are really very unpopular, but that have big support. Because people say, yes, okay, this is not nice, but we have to do it because we are Europeans and we want to belong to Europe. In the same time, I don't get it when people in Europe, states or leaders, do not understand that for us the integration process, the journey, is much more important than even the arrival, because through the journey we can modernize, we can create the states we never had in our history, and we can, possess the know-how that Europe has.
Now, the journey in politics. There is a journey, your journey in politics, and as we initially said, there is your journey in art. And of course, your journey in art never stops. You do many exhibitions. You participated in the Venice Biennale. 2 years ago, you had a recent exhibition in Berlin. It goes back to Umberto Eco in the same conversation I had with him, where he talked about the importance of having artists in the EU, of having artists in politics, of having artists on the board of organizations. He was also telling me that we need to do something about the disappearance of doodling and handwriting, because he says, in the digital age, less and less people do that. So it's also a protest. I've devoted my entire Instagram to that every day, to keep doodling alive, and also put art in the center of openness and dialogue in Tirana. It would be interesting to hear a little bit about the Center for Openness, and I'm particularly interested to wrap the conversation up here, to hear a little bit about the mushroom, about Carsten Höhler's mushroom, because I think it's a great story.
Before becoming Prime Minister, I always said, if one day I become Prime Minister, this building will not have fences anymore, because it was surrounded, looked like a prison, with fences, with soldiers. And I always believed that buildings protect themselves through beauty, not through fences. So I took off the fences, and the whole first floor was opened up to the public and is now a center for openness and dialogue, we call it. We have exhibitions, we have public library, we have a little movie theater where kids can come and can project their movies and can discuss. And we have also discussions there. And I said protesters can come and use it for free to set the case. And if they want, I can come, ministers can go to discuss with them. But protesters have a problem with discussing, because if they discuss, they are not protesters anymore. So it's not easy, but still it's there also for this. And so we had some very generous contributions from Thomas Demand, who practically was the artist that opened the center. We had a beautiful show of his work. We had Philip Pareno donation, one beautiful marquise in the entrance of the Prime Minister building, which was very controversial. It still is. My opponent friends, they want to break it but until now it has survived. But the mushroom of Carsten that was put in the garden didn't survive the assault of the protesters, so they broke it. They broke it, and of course it was a sad moment. It was sad, but it was also difficult to explain to Carsten that it was not an aesthetical protest. It was a political protest. It was against me, not against the mushroom. They couldn't get me, they got the mushroom, and so the mushroom was broken. And I was very happy when Carsten called me after a month and said, I have a great idea. Because I said to him, we need to do it again. I said, we'll do it again, but we'll do it 25% higher. So whoever will touch it will know that it will come back higher. So this will prevent people for harming the mushroom, But if they harm it, the mushroom just grows. So I find it beautiful, it's like, surviving by growing and, and reacting by coming back. So it's a very beautiful idea, and I'm looking forward to have this bigger mushroom now, which may inspire and incite some more protests, but then we'll have it even bigger, so life goes on.